A blind samurai dueling one-armed samurai. Both of them, no hesitation, no mercy, standing in an arena with real swords instead of wooden ones they're supposed to use. That's where this manga opens, and I promise you, you want to find out how they got there. Today we're talking about Shigurui, 15 volumes of Seinen from Takayuki Yamaguchi, based on a chapter of Norio Nanjo's novel. And I'll just tell you up front, this one was right up my alley. Great story, gore, mutilation, decapitation, all of it drawn explicitly without any refrain. If that sentence made you click away, fair. If it made you lean in, you're my people. Let's go. Quick ask before we continue. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's a good time. It's free, it takes only 2 seconds, and it genuinely helps. I'll wait. Welcome aboard. The setup. Edo period, 1629. A lord decides his tournament will be fought with real steel instead of wooden swords. 2 finalists face each other. One is blind, one is missing an arm. That's the frame, and the manga is essentially one long flashback explaining how these 2 men ended up broken and facing each other with live blades. It's a samurai story, but I want to be careful about what that word sets up in your head. This isn't Vagabond's spiritual journey, where a man learns to be better with a sword and better as a person in roughly equal measure. It isn't Blade of the Immortal, where the supernatural lets the genre get weird and playful. It isn't Lone Wolf and Cub's episodic grandeur. Shigurui is a different animal. It's a samurai genre stripped of every soft edge and then sharpened and then used. Yamaguchi's art is the first reason to read this thing. It's also the reason a lot of people bounce off it. The anatomy is medical. Tendons, bone, muscle. When a blade enters a body, you see exactly what's happening underneath the skin. This isn't stylized for violence, where a line of impact and a splash of ink says, "Something bad has happened here." This is studied violence. Yamaguchi drew it like he'd read an anatomy textbook and then decided the manga needed the textbook version. The other thing, and this is more important than the anatomy, is the stillness. Most of the book is not moving. Characters sit, they kneel, they face each other across corridors and say nothing for pages. And then a blade moves once and somebody is on the floor. Where other action manga cut between impacts to build rhythm, Shigurui holds. It makes you sit in the quiet until the quiet becomes unbearable, and then it punctuates the quiet with something you can't unsee. The third thing, and this is the thing that keeps the art from being only clinical, is that some of the most horrific pages in this manga are also among the most beautiful in seinen. Yamaguchi will draw a dismemberment and then draw the light catching on the blade afterwards with the composition of a classical painting. That's not a contradiction, that's the point. The beauty is what makes it bite. Here's what separates Shigurui from its peers in the samurai genre. Most samurai fiction is built around 3 ideas: honor, mastery, redemption. Characters pursue skill with a sword, and through that pursuit they become more complete people. The arc bends towards something. Shigurui gives you none of that. The masters are monstrous. Iwamoto Kogan, the sensei of this school, is not a wise old man teaching hard lessons. He is something closer to a force of nature that happens to own a dojo. The honor system that everyone in this world operates under produces cruelty as its output, not as a failure of the system, as its purpose. And mastery doesn't make anyone more whole, it makes them more broken. The better these characters get with a sword, the less of them remains. That's the genre inversion. Shigurui is asking, what if the thing samurai stories tell us ennobles people actually destroys them? What if the pursuit of mastery is the pursuit of your own ruin? So how do Iwamoto Seigen and Fujiki Gensuke, the one-armed man and the blind man from the opening, end up where they end up? They're both students of Iwamoto Kogan. Kogan is aging and his school needs a successor. What follows is a slow, methodological contest between these two men. Not a tournament, but an accumulation. They are shaped by their master and destroyed by him in roughly equal measure. The violence between them isn't rivalry in the vagabond sense, where two men circle each other across volumes and come to an understanding something about themselves in the process. In Shigurui, they come to understand nothing. They just keep arriving at the next thing. Iku, Kogan's daughter, is the third corner of this triangle. And I have to be careful how I talk about what the manga does with her, because the sexual violence in Shigurui is real, and it is divisive, and I'm not going to pretend it isn't there. What I will say is that the manga isn't using her suffering as garnish. It is using her to ask whether anyone in this system has agency, or whether everyone, men and women, masters and students, is being processed by the same machine into the same kind of wreckage. You can disagree with whether the manga earns what it does with her. A lot of readers do. I understand why. What I don't think is true is that it's careless. The question that hangs over this whole arc is whether either Seinen or Fujiki ever actually chose anything. Whether the tournament at the start of the book was the end of a path or the only path that was ever available to either of them. The manga doesn't answer that question, it just keeps drawing the path. Here's the reading of Shigurui I don't see a lot of people make. The historical setting, early Edo, 1629, isn't flavor, it's the argument. The early Edo period is when the Tokugawa shogunate was still consolidating its grip on the country. Rigid social stratification, strict codes of conduct between lords and vassals, an emerging bureaucratic order that required every human being in it to play a specific narrow role. What Shigurui is quietly saying across 15 volumes is that this social order didn't just permit people like Iwamoto Kogan and the tournament he serves, it required them. The system needed monstrous teachers producing monstrous students so that the lords could have their entertainments and their symbols of loyalty. This isn't a story about individual cruelty, it's a story about society that produces cruelty as a standard output of its normal operation. The characters aren't villains, they're components. The tournament isn't an aberration, it's a thing the whole machine was built to produce. That framing, from a story about bad people to a story about a bad structure, is why I think Shigurui sits higher in the Seinen canon than its reputation for extremity would suggest. The core is on the surface, the argument is underneath. Skip this if you cannot handle sexual violence, graphic dismemberment, or animal cruelty, depicted with anatomical precision. No euphemisms. These are all present repeatedly and in detail. Skip this if you need forward momentum in your manga. Shigurui is still, slow and patient for long stretches. Pages go by where almost nothing moves. And skip this if you are looking for a samurai power fantasy. This is the opposite. Mastery in Shigurui is a form of damage. But read this if you loved Berserk's Eclipse arc and the way it made horror into an argument rather than a spectacle. Read this if you came to the later volumes of Vagabond for the philosophical stretches and wanted something darker in the same neighborhood. Read this if you read anything by Shuzo Oshimi, Aku no Hana, Chi no Wadashi, Blood on the Tracks, and understood that the discomfort was the point. My rating for the story, 8 out of 10. A slow, deliberate structure that rewards patience. Some pacing drag in the middle volumes, but the framing device holds the whole thing together better than most 15-volume runs manage. The art, 10 out of 10. Yamaguchi is doing work here that almost nobody else in Seinen is doing. The anatomical precision, plus the stillness, plus the willingness to hold the camera on things most artists would cut away from, it adds up to a visual identity that's unmistakable. The thematic weight, 9 out of 10. The Edo period as mechanism reading earns it. It's not just dark for the sake of being dark. There's a real argument underneath the gore. Reread value 5 out of 10. And this is where the defense sentence matters. Shigurui is designed to leave a mark once. A second read doesn't give you more. It gives you the same knife again in the same place. Some manga grow on rereading. This one was built to be devastating exactly once. So overall, 8.5 out of 10. Not a manga I'll return to often, very much a manga I'm glad I have read. If I had to pick one panel that is all of Shigurui compressed into one image, and I had to pick after a lot of thinking, it's the tournament frame at the start. Two men, broken beyond recovery, standing in an arena built specifically to destroy them further, with real blades in their hands. Everything this manga is about is that one image. The social machine that put them there, the mastery that ruined them, the honor system that requires their destruction to function, the stillness right before the blade moves. You don't need 15 volumes to understand Shigurui. You need to understand this panel. But you need 15 volumes to earn understanding it. That's Shigurui. 15 volumes of one of the sharpest seinen manga ever drawn by a mangaka who understood that the pace between the violence matters more than the violence itself. If this is the kind of manga you want more of, I'm doing this every week. Next essay coming up on the channel. Keep an eye out. If you like this video, hit the like button. It helps more than you think. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of deep dives. And drop a comment. Which panel from Shigurui stuck with you? I'm Jan, and see you in the next one.